Here's a story. Here's a story that I wrote down. I wrote the story down. This is like what 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. I wrote it down in one of the. I send out every Shabbat, before every Shabbat, like every Wednesday. I send out a sort of an essay that I wrote. Most of it's 99% story, and you can subscribe to it if you want to. Send me an email, and I'll subscribe you. In any case, here's a story, a very beautiful story, and this is what I want to say. Oh, let's see, am I recording? Yes, recording. Good. But this is written by a Rabbi Edelman, and he writes like this. He wrote it in one of the Jewish publications. And I just copied it down. In the summer of 1956, after returning from the Soviet Union, I guess in 1956 was ruling, I mean, for sure, was ruling over there Khrushchev. So it was, they sort of let things a little bit, Khrushchev was not as cruel as Stalin was, and he wanted relations with the West a little bit, sort of. So he allowed people to come in and people to come out. So the Rabbi Edelman went there, and went from the Soviet Union, I guess, to go around to different Jewish communities, whatever. And he was not Chabad, a religious, an Orthodox regular Jew. So he made a visit to Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, who was better known as the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He went with a communist, he visited communist Russia with a delegation of American Jewish dignitaries. So, oh, here it is. He wrote in the BMH bulletin. What is this? I don't know what it is. And I don't know what some sort of a religious Jewish bulletin. He wrote it in 1960. He said, the purpose of my visit to the Rebbe was more than just curiosity. Right, what's it got to do? He went to the Rebbe. He didn't go to Russia in the name of Chabad or Rebbe. He went in the name of a very, how do you say, honorable organization. But why did he go to visit the Rebbe? What for? It says here like this. Somehow, as a result of what we saw in Russia, I felt I could find the answer to a very perplexing problem: how to conquer the hearts and the hands of our people for God and His Torah, and how to cause commitment to His Torah, to His truth. But he went to Russia, and he saw there were a lot of Jews in Russia, and also in America, the same problem. There was, Reform Judaism. They were eating away and destroying the whole fabric of what Judaism is. How can bring Jews back to Torah and to God? How? So why did I go to Lubavitcher Rebbe? He says, this I want to tell you about our visit in Soviet Union. It would be, how do you say, trite? Trite means like passe. What's the word for it? Like, how do you say, theatrical, or if you want to call it, to repeat the story about the spiritual decay on the hell on earth where the devil rules and the god of materialism holds sway. That's in Russia, right? In Russia, listen, I don't think it's much different than America, but America was the place of the devil for a different reason. In Russia, it was because the people didn't know about God. They didn't know about Judaism. 70 years, all Jewish education had been destroyed by communism. For 70 years, right? They forbid any sort of education other than communist education. So as a result, the people, like say, communism, it worked. They wanted to equally distribute the wealth, and it worked. It made everybody poor. Everybody was poor. Everybody was miserable. They said everyone in Russia is a thief except for Stalin because everything belongs to him. So I'm not going to repeat. Said, but why the Lubavitcher Rebbe said it was in the middle of this modern Egypt and 49 degrees of spiritual uncleanness in Russia, because there was no Judaism in there. I mean, it was just totally wiped out almost. That my colleagues and I discovered the only meaningful resistance among our people, the only ones that defied communism, are amazing. We find scattered groups of Lubavitcher Hasidim that somehow had managed not only to survive in Russia, but even to find strength and to transmit it to their children. When I returned to America, I thought, how could this possibly be? What is the power to defy Russia? What do these people get out of it? to be Jews. It was just their whole life was just, basically destroyed by holding on to Judaism. If you were a religious Jew, it was very hard. You had to not work on Shabbat. You had to believe in God. In Russia, God was the worst thing in the world. So in order to this, I hasten to say, why was communism so against Russia? I mean, it came from Marx. Marx was a very, how do you say, a very low level person. He was a very intellectual person, but he was a very, how do you say, I want to call it he was a caveman. He was a low level morally person. He had no morals whatsoever to him. And he said that we're in this world just to fix up the world. There shouldn't be any poverty in the world. We have to work in the world. We have to fix up the world according to communism. And religion makes people accept poverty. Religion makes people say the main thing is going to heaven. Going to heaven. And going to heaven, that's the opposite of being productive. So communism was basically against heaven. You have to fix up the world. I mean, it goes without saying that he sent tens of millions of people to heaven. I mean, they said that Stalin killed like 50 million people. You can look it up. Some people say it wasn't so bad. He only killed 30 million people. And Mao Zedong killed like, what is it, 100 million people, something like that. He starved them to death. And Pol Pot, what is his name, in Cambodia, he killed like 1/3 of the population of Cambodia in the name of communism. Okay, so who's going to stand against this power of communism? How could you possibly stand? Everybody was spying on everybody else. Who would be crazy enough to do such a thing like that, right? All the other religions, they left. They just closed up. They closed up shop. Chabad still stayed in Chabad. They say there were pockets of Breslev. They say that there were, but almost all of them died. That's what I heard, that almost all of them died. They couldn't take it, or they got out. They went to Israel. Okay, but Chabad was strong wherever they were. Chabad was strong, and they prayed in secret minions and all. So when I came back to America, so I went to 770 Eastern Parkway, expecting to find some sort of a main huge building which was fitting to this gigantic challenge to Russian communism and the god of Moloch, like I said, of atheism. I looked for severe security measures, secret chambers, a hard dynamic leader of an international movement that has to be somewhere hidden, and there has to be all sorts of guards outside. No, I suppose I was very disappointed to find a building, an old building, which really needed to be painted and repaired, and voices of young men learning Talmud. And suddenly I met the Rebbe. He was a middle-aged rabbi. In those days, the rabbi was what he was, the Rebbe was less than 50 years old, right? Let's see, let's have a second. The Rebbe was, let's see, he started in 1950s. He was born in, he was less than, 50, what is it, 40 something years old. A middle-aged rabbi who seemed to be hardly a match for Khrushchev that I met in Moscow. Khrushchev was a king over there. And it was the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He was just one person, and he wasn't a very, what do you say, impressive, sort of majestic person. But then I started to speak to the, that was when I started to speak to the Rebbe. And I looked in his eyes. Suddenly, it began to dawn on me. I'm sorry. How there could be Lubavitcher Hasidim in Russia. Even if they'd been cut off from the source of their strength for 30 years, they didn't see the Rebbe. They hadn't seen the Rebbe. In fact, most of them had never seen the Rebbe in their lives. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, he passed away in 1950. And this here, we're talking about and those people that were in Russia, he was the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, he left Russia in 1929, and he passed away in 1950. So that means that 20 years, they didn't see the previous Rebbe, and they had never seen our Rebbe. They never saw the Rebbe, never saw him. The 4 previous Rebbe had been expelled in the mid-20s, but all of a sudden, so they never saw the Rebbe. They were unattached to the Rebbe, and nevertheless, they were so strong. How could it be? I saw the answer to so many questions that gave me no peace. Here I saw a different type of a spirit, a strength not of of how do you say charisma and connecting people with tremendous how do you say oratory powers or whatever, the promising heaven spirit. The answer was obvious: to overcome material. I said giganticism. Here he uses the word giganticism, like the yes. One does not have to meet to be as powerful as communism physically in order to defeat communism. Synagogues don't have to be religious nightclubs or a replica of Las Vegas to draw the hearts of the people. Right? What did the reform movement say? We got to come down. We have to loosen up a little bit. Right? Loosen up a little bit. Let's make nightclubs Shabbos programs with music and things like that. The simple answer to material greatness, how do you say, of grace, is spiritual, being spiritually great, not more and less. The power of truth is overwhelming. That's its asset, just because it's the truth. This is the great discovery that is beginning to turn American Jews back to the shul. We are, it says, in the level of, it says, before the truth, everyone bows down. We're beginning to realize, oh, here, this is supposed to be here. See this? We're beginning to realize, in the words of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that before the truth, everyone will eventually bow down. For them emes muzen Allah fallen. And from the truth, everyone will fall. This is the extra thing that's the point. The Rebbe wanted to bring truth in the world, but the Rebbe also invented, or he started the idea of advertising. Advertising. He says, when you're in a country, you have to learn the good things from a country, and you have to act according to the customs of the country. In America, they advertise. In America, you have to advertise things. We have to advertise Judaism. Go out into the streets, advertise tefillin, ask people to put on, advertise lighting a menorah, advertise learning Torah, advertise keeping Shabbat, advertise putting a mezuzah on your door, advertise the truth. And the truth is what will defeat communism. And we saw that that's what happened. Who would ever dream? Was it 1990, 1981? All of a sudden, communism fell down. And the Rebbe said it was only because of the defiant self-sacrifice of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. When the communists put him into prison and he didn't have any how do you say, fear of them whatsoever, that's what broke communism. And that was what's going to break all of the problems of the world today. Our adherence to the truth in a happy and in a public way. Have a good day with Mashiach. Oh no, we have to do the Yom Yom.